Okay, so I'm so happy that Summer Howard is here with me today because we have been following each other on Instagram for a while and realized and always knew, because where I met you before, that we were like-minded in this area.
Yeah.
But I want to start out with my burning question, my North Star question. And we were just talking about how we both have hearts of service and why you chose this as your area of service to women and to people going through separation. And maybe you can describe what it was, because I'm not really describing it.
Absolutely. Yes. No, I'd love to. Thank you so much, Susan. Thanks for having me on your podcast. Happy to be here. So I started out as a divorce coach in 2013. And the reason I had a successful career as a project manager, and this was a career shift for me. And it happened a few years after my first divorce. It was a divorce and it came from questions. I kind of constantly was getting questions from friends and just people in the community. How did you do that? How did you, because people knew of the relationship, we were in a kind of a high conflict separation and divorce, but we were able to co-parent and put our daughter first. And it was in that experience of, that is the most important thing. I personally, Susan, did not have that as a child of divorced parents. They didn't have the tools or the resources. I think they would have used them if it were available. And so I very much felt led to start coaching people through the divorce process with that specifically in mind of, you can do this, have a wonderful life after divorce, and co-parent really well. Even if this is the code word for everything now, even if your ex is a narcissist, even if,
Yeah.
So that was really the impetus for the career shift.
So I love that.
Yeah.
You said it was my parents didn't know how to do that. Those resources weren't available, and they would have used it if they were. So you notice, like right back then, that there was this gap of people weren't talking about how to do this in a way to keep the focus on their family's health.
That's right. And that was 10 years ago, and over time, I started mediating 2 years ago because I saw another gap in working with people, as I was helping coach them through the process and help them prepare for mediation. They weren't being prepared for mediation. And so I started to get curious about mediation as a way to divorce, because I was a big fan at the time of collaborative law, and I still am a big fan of collaborative law.
Mm-hmm.
And I see mediation as perhaps even a better way, especially if you have children, because you are going to have to maintain a lifelong relationship with that person. And so there are some things in mediation that there's subtleties of repairing a relationship. I'm not saying that it's all done in one. I mean, as a mediator, I'm not saying that, there's a magic wand going on, but there are seeds of relationship repair that can happen when two people are listening to each other's side of the story, and being heard, and then coming to an agreement that they both participated in, and it wasn't just lawyers talking to each other. So those are two areas. That's kind of the evolution of my journey here as a divorce mediator and coach. And I love the work I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that too, because that's the thing. If you're constantly learning in your profession and you're looking for the gaps and how to educate the gaps, people in the gaps, that's so important, because I think that's where you're going to get, okay, you're speaking these people's language because they see the gaps and they feel the gaps. The two gaps is like, how can we make this process healthy for our family so we don't lose the focus of, like, okay, it's conflictual, but we still have to get through this. We still have to parent. We still have to talk to each other. We still have to do this together. We still have to look at all these pieces. And then the other gap was like, wait a minute, people aren't prepared. So tell me what it looks like when someone's not prepared. Like, what are the telltale signs? Because maybe people don't know. Like, they just try to put on their best foot forward and be brave.
Exactly. Courage is necessary for sure. but that is not the only thing. I think telltale signs are, oh my gosh, Susan, if you're going into Facebook groups and saying, hey, I have mediation in next week, what do I need to know? No, you are not prepared. It takes a while to be prepared for mediation, because you're basically coming to the table and negotiating and coming to an agreement that is going to impact the next chapter of your life, right? This is not a simple exercise. You need to prepare your. I do have a checklist, and I think I shared that with you, and we'll share this with the audience. But I have a couple different segments of the checklist. One is money. You've got to know what your assets and your debts and your retirement accounts and how you propose to divide those up. You got to know that for yourself.
I think that what you said too, just to go back, is like,
yeah,
do you propose to divvy those up? Because a lot of times people who I see the dynamic of people who've been, or they know that their partner is really sensitive about money. They've been like their career was everything, their name, what they built,
right.
that they either, there's the side of the fence, which I think is also being ill prepared, is trying to destroy somebody. I think that's like coming from a very emotional place without really looking at, again, like, how is that going to impact the family? If you're destroying someone, like trying to make someone live like not well. Right. And then there's the other part of, not being prepared because they are really not able to come up with their own proposal about what's the next chapter going to look like, where they're going to live, what do they need, what's the guiding principle of the law say, right? And also that someone else might have to help the other partner deal with what the law says, right? And that emotion doesn't get turned into anger on the family.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, they're the tactical things, that proposal of how we do this and how the agreement will come out in the end. And they're in the mediation, there's how do you deal with the emotional triggers? I'm going to use that word, but the emotional hot buttons that your spouse knows how to push. They know your buttons. So you've got to know how to regulate your own nervous system. When that's going to happen, it will happen. For some people, it will be the money discussion. For some people, it will be the child discussion, but those are usually two areas that when you're talking about the agreement, something's going to get ignited, and you've got to know how to navigate that for yourself. Because again, the consequence is not having a good decision on the next chapter of your life, right, and setting you up for success. Yeah.
Right. So the way that you really tell that someone's not prepared is when they're asking really broad questions, like a week before.
Yeah.
You're right. They haven't done their thinking. They haven't done their looking. Anything else you'd see?
Yeah. Right. I think that's another thing you brought up, Susan, which was he or she doesn't want this. So what do I do? It's, the seat of power is with the other person. Right. And we talked before we started recording of making sure that our clients understand that they have responsibilities in this. And it's your responsibility to come to the table with ideas and solutions for your life. I love
that term that you use, the person who has a seat of power in the relationship. That's the dynamic to look at, right? And that's also a dynamic that you look at in yourself if you're not the person in the seat of power,
right?
And how that might be controlling you, and how that might be something that you're still stepping away from, like how you're going to deal with that, and just understanding maybe why.
Exactly. And it's really common, and it's very common, especially with people that have been the stay-at-home parent, to look at the other person's like, well, what are you willing to give me? Well, everyone needs to know, what is it going to cost for in this next phase of life? Like, what kind of life do you want to live? Do you need to be retrained into another career? These are things that you need to come up with as a stay-at-home parent to inform the outcomes here, So Yeah, that's definitely what will they give me is something that I'm like, that you're not quite prepared to come to the table for an equal, just negotiation. If you don't know where you want to live, if you don't know how the parenting plan is going to go, that tells me that you're not prepared for the mediation. And this is why, as a mediator, when we're doing the full, actually, anytime I onboard clients, we do an hour coaching session, so that they understand that it's their vision for their future that needs to drive the strategy here. Do you want a peaceful co-parenting relationship? Then you might have to there may be some allowances in this parenting plan that need to happen, or some asks in the parenting plan that need to happen. Yeah, so those are some telltale signs. Also, I would say this, I'm like leaning in to the camera. Nobody can see this. I'm leaning in. If you have a lawyer and you think the lawyer is going to do it all for you, they're not the ones negotiating for you. They're there so that to make sure that your strategy is being held in place. But this is one of the reasons why I became a mediator, as I saw people deferring to their lawyer, and sometimes not even knowing if their lawyer is going to show up for mediation. They had no idea what to expect for mediation. They were not communicated at all from their lawyer or their mediator. And that is what really it lit a fire under me to say, we've got to change this. People need to know that this is a pathway to solution, even when you have a lawyer. And I think it's great to have that kind of counsel in mediation.
Right. But I think that's the thing, is like, if it's, there's those three types of divorces, right? People that really want to do it themselves, and they kind of almost like do it themselves, or they get a paralegal to help write it up. Or second thing is to have a mediator who's maybe a lawyer mediator if your situation is really financially complicated, or a mediator that's a certified mediator who can help do the paperwork and has a document server or whatever. And then you have the people that have the two lawyers, that their lawyers are going to fight for them, right? And that's how it gets negotiated. And sometimes it's really tough on people because they feel like, whoa, I'm something's being asked of my partner that I would never have agreed to, and I'm noticing it's making them so upset. And then there's the consulting lawyer, like, so you have the consulting lawyer. So that's what you're talking about, is the consulting lawyer who's saying, this is like the best thing for you in your picture. But if you don't know what your picture is, then they're really just like, there's just a guessing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that is it. Again, back to the seat of power exists within you. When you hire your divorce team, and that means you're a therapist, you're a lawyer, mediator, divorce certified divorce financial planner, everyone is going to ask you, what do you want? What do you want out of this? And that's the soul searching that you need to do. And the reason why I think hiring a therapist or a lawyer, a therapist or a coach is really great, because it's in those discussions where we talk about, what do you want for your future? And then you can start to implement strategy. But slapping a strategy on confusion is not the best use of money or your time.
Right. It is such a time of confusion. And also, like what you said, is like, if people can't look and they don't know what they want, that's almost like the first step, because it's such a time of confusion. If you're just like not like being just checked out or dissociative during that time. And most people they're very, very upset.
I agree.
Their whole life is changing, or they don't want their life to change.
Right. Even if you want it, it's dysregulating. It's dysregulating.
Even if you wanted the parts of you don't expect some of your life to change the way that it's going to.
Exactly. Exactly. My second divorce, I experienced that myself, which was, it was so amicable. We just had some fundamental things that couldn't be resolved between the two of us for us to live our best life. And I feel so lucky that now, you know, we're friends and we co-parent really well. So yes, I co-parent with two other parents. That's why another reason why I do this work is this is not theory to me. This is not just theory. This is a practice, and it's important. But some of the emotional things that I didn't realize, even though we were amicable, was, you know, how it seemed as if he went back to his normal life without, you know, the way he was living it before we got together. And, you know, these are the emotional, these are the wounds that kind of you have to work on and heal in those first years after divorce. It doesn't mean that the divorce was a wrong thing for you. It's just normal to have these feelings, you know?
Right. Like that was easy, that he got to go back to his normal life. Right.
Yes. And then,
Like,
and, you know, and I felt like, oh, I'm the one moving because he kept the family house. I was the one moving, and the things like that. These were all things I wanted. These were all things I wanted. But of course, there's going to be emotions behind it because it's change, and change is hard, even if it's good.
Right. I love that you're normalizing the things that are hard. And I love that you come from experience too, because, you know, you can also just tell people like, this is going to be a tough year, or this first 3 months, or you getting even what you want. We were talking about that earlier, like manifesting what you want. You still have to say, do I like it? You know,
exactly. Do I like this?
Yeah.
It took me this after this divorce. I divorced in 2020, and you know, the world turned upside down, and everyone is reevaluating what they want and how they want to live. And it took me a good few years to be like, okay, this is exactly what I want. Now that we're back on our feet, now that I have this new family unit, my girls and me, and we have some experience being this new family unit, and have kind of, you know, gotten into our own rhythm and our own, like our own traditions. Even it takes some time. You know, you don't know all these things right off the bat.
Right.
You know, so it reminded me of this decision I was talking to you about before we started recording, which was moving a little bit more into the mountains. And I'd never contemplated, how does Summer want to live in Colorado? If I'm gonna live in Colorado for a little while, how do I want to do it? Oh, I want to be in nature. I want to be in nature. And that was not what were like driving values for my ex-husbands. They wanted to be closer to like the airport or closer to town and a little bit more social. And so these are the cool things that you get to explore, you know, after you make those decisions. But I definitely had support in exploring that and getting through those hard times.
Right. Right. I mean, I think it's amazing that you're actually, you know, following two paths, like the path of your career and also the path of just normalizing your life now after sort of 2 chapters of divorce, totally different chapters, totally different types of divorce, but you're actually, you know, getting into a more powerful place, like the seat of power maybe now.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. And it actually, and to anyone who's listening, and it is possible. It is 100% possible for you. You know, Susan and I are here today to talk about like the divorce team that it takes to get here. But it is possible for you. You stay the course. And I just like, you know, Susan, you were talking about working with your clients on creating that vision. And one of the steps of the uncoupling and the divorce process is, you know, your life after divorce, making sure that you're living into and exercising your vision, even if a little bit every day. That is the most important thing. You know,
Right.
for me, when I work with clients, it's up front, you know, on the divorce strategy part. It's like, we're working backwards here. What do you want? And of course that can change. Of course it will, because
Right.
you're exploring and you're discovering what you want. But keeping, and who is that? There's I think Stephen Covey, you know, wrote a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People.
Right.
And one of those is begin with the end in mind. And that's what we're doing. We're beginning with the end in mind, because you want to end up in a place that feels really good.
Right.
And where you feel supported, where your children feel like your children are thriving, where you can communicate with your co-parent where you feel financially supported, or that you have the skills to support yourself.
Right.
These are all very important pillars of a successful life after divorce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be something to think about, is like to think about the 6 pillars of like having a successful life after divorce. I think about them as sort of what we were talking about in the first part of our talk that we didn't record, which was the idea of like, you first go through the grief cycle. Like there's a lot that you go through, right? You go through the grief cycle, whether you wanted it or not, 5 stages, then the 5 stages of grief. Then there's the 2 part that I always emphasize in my groups, is one of them is the really looking at the part of your personality that might need to change and grow in order to be a healthier person, to be accountable for your part in what happened, even if it was staying too long. And also just like, what is it about your personality that you want to change so that you can interact and engage with people in a healthier way, right?
Yes.
Then the practicing of your vision for the future. And again, it's a practice. It's like, you don't just have the vision of your future just happen. It's like what you're saying is like every day a step of like, how are you making this decision? Do you feel good about this decision? Do you have healthier habits to make decisions, to like live in your life, to have friendships, to have your work? Like, what is it that you have to heal from yourself? I mean, for yourself from the divorce, so that you can actually keep moving forward, right?
Yes. And make those decisions. And this is the important part you're touching on, is you're making those decisions based on that ideal future state, not the state of I'm in crisis mode.
Right.
So we're all in crisis mode. Everyone's in crisis mode during divorce. Our nervous systems are haywire, our prefrontal cortex, is hijacked. It's like,
right. So one of the habits of highly successful people is to think about your decision and at the end, like what you want it to be. So the same thing happens with the divorce. I keep hearing you saying the vision of the future. You're going to go through all these things emotionally, but you have to keep in mind, like, what's the vision for myself in the future? Like that has to be there. You can't be blinded to that part when you're in this process.
Precisely in this process. And even is very important also in co-parenting, which is a live relationship. Co-parenting is a relationship that is ongoing. And I had an experience, I'll just get real personal. I'm not going to go into the major details because I want to protect my family, but there was a difference. My oldest daughter's father and I had a difference of opinion on something, and I was asking for some changes, and he did not agree to that. And it threw me personally off kilter so much that I absolutely had to come back to center, which my North Star, my center was, what kind of life do I want from myself and for my children? And what kind of decisions can support that? When it comes to this disagreement, there were some things that I just had to let go. I just had to let go of. And that's hard for an ego. And that's hard for when you think you're right. Even out of ego, when you think like, no, this actually feels like the best thing for our child. Really, the best thing is peace. For me, that was the thing that I value very highly, is peace. And no one's being harmed here. And if we continue down this path, there will be harm. There will be harm. There will be hard feelings and even more resentments. And I did not want that. So keeping that as a polished stone is really important. And, so you get through the divorce process, you get your first go. Through the co-parenting process, you get to do that again and again. Maybe not too much, just depending on your relationship, and your personalities.
Is a live relationship. Co-parenting is a live relationship that you get to work on. And then you also have to think about the motto, like your motto was peace. So you keep putting up like, am I fighting? Is the fighting that I'm going to do going to disrupt that peace? And do I have to just let go of the way I think it should be, or what I want the outcome to be? Because maybe you wanting that, like, it's almost like what you said in the beginning, is that if you want to have a successful co-parenting relationship, you said one of the things is you might have to let go of things, and you might have to give something, right? So
Yeah.
you might have to
Yeah.
ask, or you might have to, or just kind of, would it be collaborate more?
Yes,
Want it to be a
exactly.
good
And
relationship.
I want to be really specific too, because our situation wasn't like many. There was no abuse going on, there was no
Yes,
addiction,
good point.
etc. So in that way, I could let peace be the guiding factor. But if there is any harm going on, obviously that trumps everything. That's
Yes, thank you
tough.
for saying that too, because that's so important. We're not saying here that you don't stand up for these things that are
Correct.
in your families, or if
Mhm.
someone's being abusive to you and you feel like you're actually you'd be threatened if you stood up for yourself. It would be a threatening position. Like to be in the seat of power would be very threatening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that is hard. I mean, like sometimes that is a hard one to negotiate, especially, having a past with someone. But peace is possible. I just felt I would take my own advice. I was like, okay, Summer, let's coach yourself through this, and that really helped, and that kind of kind of put some water on the fire in
Right.
that situation.
Right. Tell me a few more things about what you feel like is the most important part of a divorce team that you've seen. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely think a therapist, a therapist is someone who can help you through some of the emotional things that come up related to your past, maybe your family of origin, right? Whereas a coach is really helping you through, at least in my experience, helping you kind of create a vision and then like get your strategy and how do you get through that to the other side. So I think
Right.
a coach is also quite important. Um, if you have children, if you have property together, I always say a consultative legal advice is something
Right.
that's required. I'm not saying that you have to like sign up for the retainer, that $7,500 retainer. I don't know if that's necessary, but to me, it was always important to get legal counsel, even if it's unbundled services. And if you don't know what that is, you can go Google that. I think that's super important. If you have a complex situation financially, if you have a business together, if you own multiple properties, you might consider looking into hiring a certified divorce financial planner or a forensic accountant if you do have one or more businesses. And also, if you might, if there have been kind of like deceit or cheating going on, and you own a business together, you might want to consider a forensic accountant there.
Yeah.
These are things I've just seen over time.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's helpful. And other than that, I think that's a really solid team. Making sure that somebody in that picture knows about co-parenting if you have children together, particularly if they're school aged. Because like I said, Susan, this is a relationship that's going to last a long time. You can't really defer like, oh, we only have to do this for a couple more years, if they're like in college or whatever, where you don't really have those touch points. When children are very young, all the way through middle school, you're having daily touch points, weekly touch points. It's very important to have someone on your team understand the nuances of co-parenting. And by that, and you can chime in however that touches you, Susan, but for me, it's like, how do you set up exchanges so that you're minimizing conflict? How do you communicate? What's your communication plan? Things like that, especially at the beginning, are really important because even if it's amicable, things can go sideways really fast.
Right. I
During
always call it,
that first year.
yeah, I always call it like creating parameters and creating a way of having like sort of guiding principles about how you operate together, sort of operating principles, right? So you're saying it right there. It's like, how do you set up exchanges? How do you communicate? How do you make decisions together? How much do you talk? How much do you tell the parents about the visit? or the time that you had, those kinds of things, because there's so much to communicate. And I think if you're having a struggle, it's almost like changing roles, right? From being very informal with each other to being a little bit more formal. It's not just like raising kids in the same household where you might just assume that the other person's got it, right?
Yes.
It's really
100%. Those assumptions go out the window. Do not assume anything. Don't assume. And I've seen that those are where the conflicts arise. Even if you're doing it an amicably, an amicable divorce, conflict arises when you're assuming too much of the other person or not enough, or just not communicating. So it's good to be like over detailed, just in case something goes wrong. Then you have this parenting plan that's detailed, and everyone can rely on this,
right.
And over time, I've seen flexibility be built in to everything. But in the beginning, it is really important to be detailed in that co-parenting plan.
And I think patient too, because things will change over time. And if you can get really solid in what the parameters are, then people will be able to be more flexible. Sometimes the tension or the anger or the, feelings about each other, the other people in a conflictual divorce never really completely relax, but it can be much more comfortable. And that's why I always tell people at the beginning, if people can't do overlaps because it's too raw, like an overlaps, meaning that being in the same space together with the kids, then it's okay. It's people because the kids want that. But if you're not able to do that, then to give that time, because sometimes it's able to come back with the overlaps.
Yes, exactly. But sometimes in certain situations, depending on how the divorce came to be, it's nearly impossible. Are people emotionally able to see their ex with their new person? Sometimes not. And so setting up expectations for the kids too, I think is really important. I mean, communicating that, okay, we're not going to be at every event together, but we still love you, and that's important. That's important for children to know, just kind of like setting expectations,
right,
and communicating that to your children too.
So I wanted to ask two other questions before we end. And one of them was the whole idea about like, when you meet someone who's not ready, just not ready to
not ready. Yes, exactly. Well, I mean, you've been working in this space for a long time. It takes people years. To make that decision. So if you're not ready, and I've seen regrets on the other side of divorce only if you feel that there was something that you couldn't, or that you didn't try. If there was one thing that you just didn't do that could have perhaps helped the marriage. I would say if you think that there's an avenue that you haven't pursued and you're not ready, do that avenue, whatever it is. If it's like instating a date night, or if it's going to marriage and marriage counseling, or a boot camp or something like that, do that thing. But I want to make sure that people know that it's okay to separate, and separation can be good for a marriage also, so there's time for people to work out whatever questions they have about their future. And I've seen people get back together. It is okay. It is not like a scarlet A on people anymore. I think that it's more than anything, you've got to do what's right for you and your family, and it will look different for everyone. Please don't think that there's like a formula to this. Everyone has their own way.
Yeah, just as unique as the relationships are.
Absolutely.
Relationship, right. And I was also referencing the whole idea about sometimes if you're not the initiator, then sometimes people aren't ready to do the legal and financial process. And
I see.
like they're just not ready. And I've seen people actually feel really forced to like, let's get this over, let's do it, let's get this moved on. And they can't, they're not able to do it. They're almost like on the verge of nervous breakdown kind of thing.
Yes. So, okay. I know what you're asking now. If you're not ready, this is absolutely when you reach out for help, because you were talking about the stages of grief earlier, Susan, and you're in a stage of grief of denial, that this isn't happening. You're not ready for it to happen. That's okay. People can help you through this. Again, like a divorce coach, a therapist can help you. The coaches will help you through even the paperwork. A mediator is going to require that you get some of these paperwork done before you start mediating. Like the finances piece is usually the piece that is the longest, hardest piece for even if people want to come to the table. It takes the longest to do.
Right.
But I would say that if you're hesitating and know that that's totally normal, right? It's totally normal. It will. Change is going to happen. I was just saying this to a group over the weekend. Divorce will change you. It will change you. How you come out on the other side is up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So give me a success story, like someone that you felt like really went through the process, really used their resources well. And then conversely, like someone that you felt like you really needed them to use their resources more or create more resources for them to get through the process, sort of.
Yeah.
Just hear the difference of how people go through it.
Well, let's see. Because we're talking about like snowflake situation where everything is just so unique. It's so unique. Some of my best case studies, of going through using me as a coach or mediator was making sure that they knew what kind of co-parenting relationship they wanted in the end. And so the things that they used to do that was, me as a coach, and then also therapists for themselves and their children. So they understood what their kids were going through and some of the points that would cause issues for their kids. Because of course, as you know, as a therapist, these like acting out or, dealing with the change is hard for parents individually and as a couple. So kind of understanding where your kids are emotionally through the process is really important. Again, successful case studies are people that used lawyers for a consultation. And here's why, because even if they used a mediation to get to the divorce agreement, right? They were confident that what they came up with was fair, right? Was just. And so, to me, that was a resource that is a real good use of your money and your time when
Right.
you know what you want in the end. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a great, that confidence, like almost like being educated about what your choices are and really feeling like you found one that you felt like you could live with.
Yes, exactly. So those things to me are kind of like magic ingredients. If you have a coach, someone that can help you as an individual go through the process, and then you have people that understand that mental health piece for you and your kids. And then you have the legal grounding, like they're grounding you in the legal realities, because sometimes what you want in the future may not have a legal standing.
Right.
If you want to have the lifestyle you have today as a couple, it may not look like that, moving forward. It's not to say that you can't have it eventually, and it's not to say that you're not going to have a good life.
Right.
But to be equal, it just may not be possible. So
right.
It's just kind of that grounding in reality.
Yeah, I can hear that you really take each case that you're working with and figure out where you're going to come in and where you're going to help. Because again, the snowflake, right?
Exactly.
Everyone has their own situation, has their own thing that they're working with and struggling with. And so I hear that you've really like honing into, and the other tip that I'm hearing you say is that the mental health piece is so important on the other side of every decision that you're making. That's like, how you want your future to be, like the mental health piece for yourself, what you're going through, what your kids are going through, how you can understand that a little bit more, evens it out too, right? So it's not like
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, I get incredible referrals from therapists in the community because they know that it takes everyone, right? It takes everyone to get through this piece, and it doesn't last forever, right? So
Right.
we're not talking about, having the divorce coaches for years. No, we're just here for this. It's almost like a
Right.
guide holding your hand through this
Right.
transition,
Right.
and it's not forever, but it's for now. Now, you asked where have I seen people not use resources? Well, not be consistent with the people that they've hired. Yeah, a lot of it's consistency, and I can't blame people because it's overwhelming. But if you can consistently use the resources to get through the hard times, even if you don't have something, even if you don't know what you're gonna say on the coaching call, but show up to that thing, call that lawyer, make sure that you get 3 referrals, or interview 3. Do the things that you may just not want to do.
Right. I think
But
that's
it's
such a
showing up
good
for
point.
yourself.
You're saying that really, really well, because I do think what happens sometimes is people might do one step and it's really hard step to do. And they're like, oh, I'm just going to take a break for a while. So a lot of times people do the hardest thing, like they might physically move locations, but then everything else is kind of put on. It's like just trying to get used to that. But in a way, what happens is, and I've seen this before, is like I've seen people really hem and haw during a divorce process, and maybe 2 years go by.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes during the hemming and hawing is also not looking at the mental health component, right? So then you see people, oh my gosh, they're just as stuck as they were 2 years ago. So that's why I feel like that consistency, like getting educated, asking your questions, talking about your stuckness,
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. Because I've seen people stall saying, well, I just don't want to have a relationship after this. I'm not looking to date. And, I think the point isn't so that you're going to get in another relationship. The point is so that you become a healthy individual on the other side that's loving your life, that like loves your life. That's the point. So you don't have to hop from one relationship to the next. You don't have to be 100%,
Right.
healed either.
Right. That is a great way to sort of say the ending of this talk that we've had is like, it's not the goal of like, anything that anyone thinks it should be. It's for you to just have the life that you think you should have. And you might not even know what that is. And so there's the work. What life do I want to have? Who am I now? All that's the work. But it is to do something with sort of molding yourself after this trauma. And it can be a transformation, not a trauma.
Yes. Yes. Let it be let us have this prayer for all. Let it be a transformation, not a trauma. Yes.
So one of the things, if you've listened to this talk up to this point, and even if you haven't listened to it all the way to the end, you will be getting a whole description of how to find Summer and what she offers. And I think we're going to be sending the divorce, what is it, checklist to see.
The divorce mediation checklist for parents. Yeah, absolutely.
So you'll get a whole lot of information and a lot of tips on how to get yourself through this process, or even consider the process in a healthier way for yourself. Any final words of wisdom from you, Summer?
Oh, just that a beautiful life is possible for you within the marriage, if that's what you choose, and even after divorce. Mm-hmm. Anything is possible. I believe in you. I believe in your listeners. And thank you so much, Susan, for having me today.
Thanks for just bringing all this great information to the people who are picking it up. I think it's so critical, and I'm so glad that you're out doing the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Well, stay in touch. I'm sure we will, but it's so nice to see you.
You too.
See you again soon.
Bye.
Bye for now. Okay.